A recent news announcement disclosed the closure of California's Indian Bank, highlighting its significant failure. Last night, an emergency meeting took place in Washington, where GTX leaders convened. Bobby Walker entered his office, followed by his assistant, who informed him that Sally Wilcox was awaiting him in the conference room. Bobby then proceeded to the staff room, where he noticed a somber atmosphere among his colleagues. Upon inquiring about the cause of their distress, he received no response, prompting him to visit Connell's office to seek clarification, wondering if someone had passed away. Bobby inquired with Connell regarding the recent developments. Connell informed him that the mobile phone division in Newport News had been shut down. He further noted that they had merged the SHIP system with the rail product, which was corporate jargon for job cuts disguised as innovation. Subsequently, Bobby approached Sally's office to seek clarification on the situation. Sally introduced him to Dick Landry from the legal department, who explained that the company had undergone a division change and would offer him benefits in recognition of the 12 years of service they had shared. Specifically, he mentioned that for his 12 years with the company, he was entitled to 12 weeks of full pay and benefits. Bobby questioned whether he was being terminated, to which Sally reassured him that they would also facilitate opportunities for additional employment services. In a fit of anger, he demanded to know if G was aware of their decision. Sally requested that he take a seat, but he declined and exited the room. One day, Sally is Bruce Wayne managing Wayne Enterprises, and the next, he is Bobby Walker standing outside GTX with a cardboard box. From billionaire to broke, it seems even Batman cannot evade corporate downsizing. Bobby began to pack his belongings as his secretary inquired about her job status. He informed her that he had not inquired about anything at Jean's office. Meanwhile, Phil was waiting for him there. Jean noticed Phil's troubled expression and asked what was amiss. His assistant informed him that Sally had terminated several employees from the SHIP system sales group. Phil, who had been hiding in the office all day, exclaimed that he would never allow anyone to fire him after 3 decades of service. 30 years of loyalty vanished in 30 seconds, revealing that dedication does not guarantee job security. Back at Bobby's residence, his wife, Maggie Walker, stepped outside and spotted Bobby. While preparing dinner, she inquired about his presence at home at that hour, to which he replied that he was cooking. Maggie informed him of their plans to visit Jack's house that evening, but Bobby declined to join them. This upset Maggie, prompting her to retreat inside the house, followed by Bobby. They engaged in a heated argument, questioning his refusal to accompany them and his apparent disdain for Jack. Bobby then revealed that he had been terminated from his job, stating, "I was let go today." An irritated Maggie inquired about Jean, reminding Bobby of his commitment to secure his position. Bobby explained that Jean had been absent from the office all day and that the decision had been made by Sally Wilcox. It is remarkable how quickly the sentiment of solidarity can shift to one of helplessness. Meanwhile, Phil returned home and asked his daughter Susan where her mother was. She informed him that her mother was suffering from a headache. Just as Phil was about to head upstairs, Susan called out to him, sharing the news that their next trip would be to Italy. She inquired if she would be included, to which Phil responded affirmatively, though he expressed uncertainty about his own ability to go. "A vacation to Italy sounds wonderful, provided you still have a job to return to," he remarked. Upon entering the bedroom, Phil's wife asked if he had heard about Colin's termination and whether they were managing well. Phil reassured her and mentioned the need to prepare for Salinger's dinner, suggesting that when financial troubles arise, a lavish dinner is the best remedy. He had completely forgotten to mention that she need not attend if she was unwell, asking her to give him a moment. Meanwhile, Jean stood in a daze at the table, filling his bottle with ice, when his wife approached him and spoke. Upon their early departure, they reminded him of the importance of punctuality. Bobby, Maggie, and their children arrived at Jack's residence, where they greeted everyone warmly. Jack inquired about Bobby's transition from his lucrative job in Africa to a new position. During their conversation, the birthday celebrant entered, and Bobby humorously remarked that she appeared more like a 21-year-old than a 35-year-old, prompting laughter from both. She then invited Bobby to enjoy a drink, suggesting he help himself to the margaritas prepared for the Man of the Year celebration. The host introduced Jean McClary, the executive vice president of GTX, highlighting her role as one of the company's first employees. Gan took the stage, reminiscing about the challenges faced during the company's early days and commending James for his efforts in expanding GTX into a significant enterprise. Jean subsequently invited James to speak, where he expressed gratitude to the audience and acknowledged the difficulties of building GTX. Crediting Jean for her support, he remarked, "Without a doubt, constructing a company is not as simple as issuing mass layoffs and then rewarding oneself for visionary leadership. If that does not define corporate villainy, I am uncertain what does." The following day, Bobby attended a job training session, where he was greeted by Danny, who inquired about his destination. Bobby explained he was heading to orientation and was directed to the appropriate room. Inside, a woman outlined the job requirements, emphasizing that fear and anxiety could be valuable assets in any profession. Meanwhile, at GTX, Jean and the staff deliberated on the merger of the ship systems and rail products divisions. Phil and Nan joined the discussion as the team expressed concerns about managing the same volume of accounts with a reduced workforce. Phil remarked on their fortunate circumstances in retaining employment during such challenging times and redirected the conversation towards strategies for regaining business. Bobby exited the orientation and sought a place to sit, only to be informed by colleagues that the seat was already occupied. Everyone was intimidated by him due to his status as a new employee, yet you did not feel threatened. Bobby inquired of Danny why he was unafraid, to which Danny attributed his lack of fear to his self-assurance. Danny then asked Bobby about the duration of his employment, and Bobby clarified that it was a 3-month full salary along with 4 months of outplacement support. Danny mentioned he had 9 months but had already utilized 4, likening the situation to a ticking time bomb, questioning how long he could extend those months before genuine panic ensued. Later, Jean and Bobby met for lunch, where Jean inquired about Bobby's well-being and that of his family. Bobby responded that everything was satisfactory. Jean informed him that the company was in dire straits, necessitating staff reductions, as Salinger was under immense pressure to elevate the stock price before a potential acquisition. Jean mentioned that he had contacted several marketers, naming them and providing Bobby with a document. This provoked Bobby's anger, leading him to drop the paper and leave, declaring he would take them once he began working with their competitors. Bobby swiftly transitioned from corporate loyalty to corporate vengeance. During a conversation at home, Maggie and Bobby discussed his interactions with Jean, where Bobby noted that Jean was assisting him in connecting with marketers, which Maggie found commendable. However, with unpaid bills looming, Maggie suggested that Bobby seek employment to alleviate their financial burdens. When Bobby's father, Kevin, called, Maggie handed him the phone, but Bobby declined to speak, unwilling to hear his father's counsel. In a discussion regarding the entertaining articles featured in the newspaper, James and Jean reminisced about their experiences from good times. James invited Jean and Cynthia to join him in celebrating the new year at Sun Valley. However, Jean expressed hesitation, mentioning that his grandchild would be visiting. While Jean was enjoying some time outdoors, Cynthia approached him to check on his well-being. He shared that he had lunch with Bobby and was dreading an unpleasant encounter. Cynthia then revealed that she and Sue were planning a weekend trip to Palm Beach and asked about the possibility of using the corporate jet. Observing Jean's reaction, she quickly assured him that they would choose commercial flights instead. Later, Maggie proposed selling their house, but Jean refused, asserting that they would not allow themselves to be trapped in that situation. He then departed for an interview, driving separately while Maggie took the children. In contrast, Bobby Walker was struggling to sustain a lifestyle that was no longer feasible, hoping to remain under the radar. During the interview, the interviewer evaluated his sales experience and asked about regional sales, which he confirmed. She offered him a salary of $65,000 for a position outside his area. Frustrated, Bobby contended that he had previously earned $120,000 at GTX and had applied for the vice president of marketing position. The interviewer replied that they had numerous highly qualified candidates, to which he insisted he was one of them. Following this, Bobby returned to the office and began contacting marketers regarding job openings, but received only negative feedback. Phil Knight had built Nike from the ground up into a billion-dollar empire, while Bobby Walker, at this rate, would be fortunate to sell sneakers from his car to pay the rent. Bobby continued to call Sally, leaving voicemails when she did not answer. He expressed his frustration, saying, "Hi Sally, Bob Walker here. Thank you for not returning any of my calls." Upon returning home, he found Drew sitting alone. Bobby asked what was troubling him, and Drew reassured him that he could manage his issues as he was maturing. Bobby then confided in Drew about losing his job but assured him that everything would be fine. He maintained that he belonged to their group. Subsequently, Bobby returned to the office and began reaching out to marketers about job opportunities, but only encountered negative responses. Phil Knight had established Nike as a billion-dollar enterprise from scratch, whereas Bobby Walker, at this pace, would be lucky to sell sneakers from his vehicle to cover his rent. Bobby persisted in calling Sally, leaving voicemails when she did not pick up. He conveyed his irritation, stating, "Hello Sally, this is Bob Walker. I appreciate your lack of response to my calls." Upon arriving home, he discovered Drew sitting by himself. Bobby inquired about his concerns, and Drew reassured him that he could handle his problems as he was growing up. Bobby then confided in Drew about his job loss but reassured him that everything would turn out alright. During Thanksgiving at Jack's house, the men discussed business while Fr served the meal. Jack inquired about Bobby's employment, to which Bobby provided a vague response. Jack noted that he had read Salinger earned 700 times more than the average GTX employee, a timely reminder that those at the top seldom experience the struggles of those at the bottom. Before they began eating, Carson offered a prayer, thanking God for their health and requesting that her father find employment, inadvertently revealing Bobby's unemployment to everyone. Jack proposed a job to Bobby, but he declined, stating he could always use some additional assistance. He maintained that he belonged to their group. Subsequently, Bobby returned to the office and began reaching out to marketers about job opportunities, but only encountered negative responses. Phil Knight had established Nike as a billion-dollar enterprise from scratch, whereas Bobby Walker, at this pace, would be lucky to sell sneakers from his vehicle to cover his rent. Bobby persisted in calling Sally, leaving voicemails when she did not pick up. He conveyed his irritation, stating, "Hello Sally, this is Bob Walker. I appreciate your lack of response to my calls." Upon arriving home, he discovered Drew sitting by himself. Bobby inquired about his concerns, and Drew reassured him that he could handle his problems as he was growing up. Bobby then confided in Drew about his job loss but reassured him that everything would turn out alright. During Thanksgiving at Jack's house, the men discussed business while Fr served the meal. Jack inquired about Bobby's employment, to which Bobby provided a vague response. Jack noted that he had read Salinger earned 700 times more than the average GTX employee, a timely reminder that those at the top seldom experience the struggles of those at the bottom. Before they began eating, Carson offered a prayer, thanking God for their health and requesting that her father find employment, inadvertently revealing Bobby's unemployment to everyone. Jack proposed a job to Bobby, but he declined, stating he could always use some additional assistance. The company is undergoing restructuring, which involves workforce reductions. Later, in bed, Maggie and Bobby discussed their financial situation. Maggie suggested that by lowering the price of their house, they could sell it for $850,000. She questioned Bobby's refusal of Jack's offer, to which Bobby firmly stated that he would not work under Jack. At this moment, pride is all that Bobby has left, and he clings to it desperately. Meanwhile, Jean and Sally were also in the bed. Jean inquired about the criteria for downsizing, but became irritated and left. Bobby and his teammates went golfing, but Bobby was informed that he had not paid for his membership. He then approached Maggie to understand the situation, and she explained that they could not afford the upcoming month's payment, urging him to stop golfing and seek employment to cover the mortgage. Bobby wanted to maintain an image of success, but Maggie reminded him of their current reality and asked him to cancel his golf plans, as being removed from the golf course signifies a significant decline in status. Later, Bobby and Maggie shared a heartfelt conversation where Bobby expressed his despair, exclaiming that at 37, he could not support his family. Maggie comforted him, assuring him that everything would be alright and that his family was there for him, offering a warm embrace. Bobby attended a job interview where he received a commendation from Dan Mass, with the position offering a salary of $90,000 plus commission and bonuses. The interviewer indicated that while he could not guarantee anything, Don's recommendation and Bobby's resume made him a strong candidate for the role, providing a glimmer of hope. However, when Bobby later called to inquire about the job, he was informed that it was no longer available. Heartbroken, Bobby watched as the individual he sold his car to drove it away. First, he lost his golf membership, and now his car. Bobby is witnessing his former life fade away piece by piece. At a party, Phil approached Jean to inform her that Sally had terminated his employment. Jean then confronted Sally in her office, where Sally handed him a document indicating that he too had been fired. Jean and Phil engaged in a conversation regarding their long-standing commitment to the company. Feeling a sense of betrayal, Jean returned home but chose to disregard his wife's attempts to reach him. Meanwhile, Phil commenced a new position on the factory floor at Joanna's office, which took Bobby and the team by surprise. Joanna inquired whether Phil smokes, and upon learning that he does so occasionally, she advised him to quit. He then departed for the office, where he received a blunt remark about his appearance as he approached 60, suggesting he would face challenges ahead. Bobby visited Phil's new office to discuss the separate office arrangement, indicating that the company would incur additional costs. Phil responded that this was the least the company could do for him. He then inquired about the dress code, to which Bobby confirmed that casual attire is acceptable at home. Bobby engages in a phone conversation with the mortgage company, informing them that he had spoken with the representative from their office the previous week, who mentioned that he had not made his payment for the current month. He offers to write a check and send it to them if necessary. Meanwhile, Maggie joins him from upstairs, listening to the conversation with a smile. After Bobby concludes the call, she inquires about the identity of the person he was speaking with, to which Bobby responds that it was a mortgage company, specifically American Express. Maggie then mentions that she has been asked to work tomorrow night, to which Bobby replies that it is New Year's Eve. Drew then enters and requests Bobby to drive him to Kyle's house, but Bobby declines, stating he is occupied. Disappointed, Drew returns upstairs, and Maggie explains that Drew no longer has an Xbox, having returned it because he recognized their financial struggles. This situation highlights the profound impact of a child quietly giving up something they cherish due to their parents' hardships. Subsequently, Bobby returns to Jack's workplace to inquire about job opportunities, expressing his need for employment. That same day, he begins working, assisting Jack in carrying timber as he works in construction. Bobby soon grows fatigued, prompting Jack to encourage him to carry 2 more pieces, emphasizing the challenges of their situation. Mogul is depicted as a man grappling with the challenge of carrying a 2x4, showcasing significant character growth. During lunch in one of the work areas, Bobby sits apart, contemplating his hands. One of Jack's workers approaches him, noting that the new gloves he is using are the cause of his blisters, and offers him an older pair. This moment, though small, is impactful. Bobby is not only acquiring job skills but also learning humility. The following morning, Bobby arrives at work to sandblasting duties, where he is instructed to add another sack to the mixture due to its thin consistency. Jack, observing Bobby, makes a sarcastic remark about the simplicity of the task, likening it to moving cost reports from the outbox. Meanwhile, Jean and Sally are at home, where she inquires about his plans for the day and mentions an invitation to dinner from her old friends at Dana. Phil attends a job interview, and upon introducing himself at the reception, the receptionist instructs him to sign in and take a seat, as there are numerous applicants and a lengthy queue. Jack hands Bobby his paycheck, which contains an unexpected additional $200. When Bobby questions Jack about it, Jack suggests it might be an error and tells him to keep it, implying it was likely a mistake. Later, Jean joins Sally for dinner with her old friends, appearing discontent yet feigning enjoyment, as he continues to play the role of a man in control, despite lacking any real power. Bobby and his family move into his parents' house, and Bobby enters Drew's bedroom, where Drew is lying in bed with his earphones on. Bobby removes the earphones and checks on Drew's well-being. Drew shares that he is comfortable sleeping in the same room as his sister for a time. He mentions that he purchased sneakers without checking the price, and now he is contemplating which pairs to sell to make ends meet. Phil Knight would likely feel let down by this situation. Liam, the son of Jean, visits Jean's residence, where they converse while Billy's family enjoys outdoor activities. Jean informs Liam of his plans to acquire a vineyard in June and his ongoing job search. Liam inquires whether Jean has spoken to his mother, revealing that she is considering selling the house and is experiencing significant difficulties. Meanwhile, Bobby arrives at work and notices Mike's absence. Upon asking about Mike, he learns that Mike has been arrested again for assault and disorderly conduct. Bobby then informs Jack that he has a potential candidate for a job. Subsequently, Danny joins the team, transitioning from the job market to manual labor. Jean later visits a bar and finds Phil drinking. He offers to drive Phil home, but Jean declines, explaining that Phil's wife prefers to keep his job loss a secret from the neighbors. After a period of time, Bobby returned home where his mother informed him that a person named Fred Munt had called, offering him a job. Although the position is located in Boston, Bobby chose to accept it. Maggie expressed her doubts, but Bobby reassured her that the role is for Vice President of Sales and Marketing, which lines perfectly with his qualifications. He felt this was the opportunity he had been waiting for, as the title of Vice President seemed like a dream come true, despite the potential complications that often accompany such offers. As the saying goes in Argo, this is the best bad idea we have. Bobby traveled to Boston and checked into a motel. The following morning, he arrived at the office for his interview, only to discover that his appointment was actually scheduled for the following week, not that Friday. When he inquired about his appointment, he was met with confusion. Meanwhile, Phil met with James for lunch and discussed a job opening for foreign executives, expressing his interest. However, James informed him that he would not consider hiring anyone over the age of 30 for this position, citing that it is a challenging role. It seems that years of experience are irrelevant if one is over 30. Later that evening, Jean found Phil in a state of anger, throwing stones at the GTX building. Phil confided in him about his financial difficulties, yet there was little they could do. Back at home, Phil washed the dishes before retreating to his garage to smoke. Afterward, he entered his car, closed the garage door, and tragically ended his life through carbon monoxide poisoning. The following day, Jean, Bobby, and others gathered for Phil's funeral, a heartbreaking but sadly frequent outcome for those who feel utterly defeated. Afterward, Bobby and Jean visited their former workplace, reminiscing about better times, now overshadowed by loss. Bobby lamented, "Everything I dedicated 30 years to building for myself and others is gone." He later returned home to apologize to Maggie for his perceived failures, but she reassured him that this too would pass. The next day, Jean visited GTX to inquire with James about his absence at Phil's funeral, but he diverted the conversation to Phil's wife. When Jean questioned why he had terminated employees despite the company's stability, James maintained that his actions were necessary for the company's survival. Meanwhile, Bobby received a call from Jean regarding a job opportunity. Later that day, he met with Jack to discuss Jean's offer, expressing his inclination to remain with Jack, expressing her desire to be remembered for future collaborations. Subsequently, Bobby entered the office and greeted the staff before promptly issuing directives and commencing his work, commenting on the luxurious accommodations. Bobby has returned to the corporate environment, albeit with a renewed outlook, emphasizing that the team works diligently every day, just as they did while seeking employment, assuring that everything will be fine.